Welcome to Everyday Royalty, the podcast for heirs of the kingdom ready to dig deeper into their royal identity. I'm your host, Carrie Kitchen, and here we talk about living each day rooted in God's presence, shaped by His voice, and equipped for spiritual battles. You'll hear real stories, honest conversations, and encouragement to help you stand firm in who you are, no matter the season. If you've been tested, but you know there's more to this journey with the Most High King, this podcast is for you. You're not just surviving, you're being refined, restored, and crowned with purpose every single day. This is Everyday Royalty. Let's walk it out together. Today we welcome back Dr. Karl Lehman, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation with him. Dr. Lehman is a creator of the Immanuel Approach to Prayer, and he shares exciting updates about how this life-changing method is being integrated around the world. From working with military chaplains to collaborating on new brain science research about connecting with Jesus during moments of stress and trauma. In this episode, we dive into practical tools and deep insights on managing toxic versus healthy stress, the impact of relational circuits, and how living an Immanuel lifestyle isn't just a technique, but a daily reality that brings true healing and transformation. Dr. Lehman and I also talk about the importance of supportive community and the simple but profound power of inviting Jesus into every part of our journey. Whether you're new to the Immanuel approach or looking for fresh encouragement, this conversation is packed with wisdom, hope, and actionable steps to help you experience God with us in a real and tangible way. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Karl. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Glad to be here.
I am excited to hear, because it's been a while, I'm excited to hear what kind of updates you've got, what you've been working on, and just how you've seen God showing up in your work before we jump into our topic today.
Yeah, wow. So one way to summarize what I'm doing is that my to-do list for the Immanuel approach to help it grow and spread around the world is longer than my remaining life. So, and that's, of course, I'm not so slow as to like, oh, I haven't thought to delegate. I mean, that's including every strategic thing I can think of as far as what can somebody else do. The tasks that seem most important for me to do, my to-do list is longer than my remaining life. So I've got 50 things going here and there around the world with the Immanuel approach. Everything from trying to help the chaplains in the army, because there's complicated as far as for the government separation of church and state. So you can't push a faith-based intervention on a soldier who doesn't want that.
Right.
But the reality is that 80 to 90% of the soldiers are already Christians. And if you ask them, hey son, is faith important to you? Yes, sir. Would you like to include that in your care? Oh my goodness, I would love to. So if you have a chaplain who's a believer and you have a soldier who's a believer, it's actually completely legal to include a faith-based intervention in any kind of mental health care or chaplain care that you want to do there. So I'm talking to people fairly high up in the network of chaplains for the entire Army for the United States about what about including an Immanuel approach in that system, and trying to do similar things with the Air Force and the Navy at the moment, and pursuing options with Alpha Course, how to include the possibility of applying our brain science to help people connect to Jesus in that setting, and stuff with InterVarsity, and trying to do some research and connected with a possible funding source to do cutting edge brain scan research on what happens when a person experiences the living presence of Jesus while they're connected to a traumatic memory, and what does their brain look like, and how can you see it change? And
that's exciting.
And we have various levels of connection with probably 6 or 7 or 8 different seminaries, as far as possibly including the Immanuel approach in what they do. One seminary, they are bringing me in now each year for their doctoral ministry cohort to have like a visiting. I come in for one class session to facilitate a group Immanuel exercise and then have Q&A time. And then there's maybe 10 other organizations that I'm just, and sometimes you plant a seed and have a couple conversations and they're all excited about it, and then it takes 5 years to bear fruit, and other times things go faster. So lots of lots of things I'm in the middle of trying to help people all over the world apply brain science to experience the living, tangible, interactive, personal friendship of Jesus. Is
That
that?
is very, very exciting. And that's also, we'll pause and say that's a prayer point for all you listening. Just pray into this because you are
Yes.
planting the seeds, but God makes them grow in the right time. And we know that. And it's so exciting because this is such a life-changing realization when you really get that Jesus is Immanuel. He really wants to be
He-
with us. He really wants to be there. And I've found that to be true even in my clinical work too, how we can't push on anybody, of course, and I don't. But it's exciting when someone starts talking about their faith. I'm like, oh, well, about that. Let
about
me share
that.
something with you because this is something we can incorporate into. And usually they're very receptive to that. That's very exciting to see how it plays out.
Very frequently, the person will be very receptive,
Mhm.
and you actually offer that as an option, and you talk about that as just a possibility, and you ask
Yeah.
about, is faith important to you? Was that important to your in your childhood? And I'm amazed at how many people say, oh, I would love to try that.
Yeah.
And then when they actually experience the living presence of Jesus, they're just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So very cool, very excited. If we had an extra hour, I could just tell stories about that for the entire podcast.
I love hearing the stories. And I love that you send out the updates that have the stories and share just a little bit about what's been going on. And when you have success stories that you want to share, I love that. It's so encouraging. And I know just with the clients that I have used the Immanuel approach with, I always say Jesus is such a better therapist than I will ever be. And I'm so grateful for that. I am completely okay with that.
Uh, Just what day is this of the week? This is Friday. Tuesday.
Friday.
Just this week I was doing a session and Jesus did some really elegant, I mean some just really elegant, high level, sophisticated kind of troubleshooting intervention. It's stuff that the advanced facilitators for like EMDR and other trauma work have. There's this intervention called cognitive interweave, and it's a fairly high level kind of troubleshooting intervention to help someone get unstuck in a certain way. And Jesus did this. I guess I was just okay. So Jesus is still there. Ask him what he wants to do. Just focus on Jesus. Ask for help. Tell me what happens. And he did this elegant, beautiful, skillful intervention that I was just. It was not. I was just. I was impressed. I was just watching
I
the master work. It's very encouraging and very cool, very inspiring, faith building
mhm.
to be the first assistant and watch and I'm the first assistant and Jesus is in the driver's seat and it's profoundly faith building to watch
Absolutely.
him work.
It has been so impactful for me as the clinician, just kind of watching things unfold sometimes because I'm sitting there thinking, I would have done this, this, and this, and I would have overcomplicated that. That's not what they needed. Sometimes it's so simple. I'm just like, huh, I didn't even think about that.
Very cool. It's
I love it.
I love it. Yes.
It's exciting to see it play out. And like I said, I've seen it in my own work too. And it's changed how I view a lot of things. It's also given me a lot of pause in how I view just how we respond to things as human beings. You mentioned EMDR, and I've leaned more into kind of studying more in that direction. I've not been trained in EMDR yet, but I'd like to be. But it's just the that focus on even the vagal nerve and just all of the things in that area, like physically what happens in our bodies, and then how Jesus really is the answer. I'm so amazed by how much scripture backs that up and just how beautifully it flows together. And I wanted to actually invite you to speak a little bit on that today, just physically what happens
Yes.
when our relational circuits are not on, and just
Yes.
the value that being able to connect with Jesus really provides, because it's a huge topic, I know. So I'll just kind of let you share your thoughts.
Yes. So let's yeah, we'll try to make a small dent in the huge topic with the time we have today. So
Right.
now, did you want to set that up any more as far as sympathetic, parasympathetic stimulus, stress, or do you want me just to jump in?
Well, either way, I'll say what I usually explain to my clients is that when your brain perceives a threat, then your body's going to respond because it's designed to do exactly that. It's designed to prepare you to either run away or fight or freeze, whatever it needs to happen for survival. And I know that in our society in general, we see a lot of people living in that survival mode all the time because our brains are registering a
Mhm.
threat all the time because we see things and feel threatened by them, even when sometimes they're not really a threat. And we were talking a few episodes back about how sometimes when we are not thinking about God's truth and aligning with his what he has to say, we're perceiving things as a threat that really aren't. So that's
Yeah.
triggering this threat system in our bodies, with where the sympathetic nervous system
Yeah.
kicks in, and then we start having all of these symptoms, like we're trying to run away from a bear or tiger at the door where there's
Yeah.
not really, and all of that. So you could probably explain it a lot better.
Well, that's not a bad start. And one of the pieces that's I'll try to clarify a piece about the larger framework right at the front end, because people talk about in negative stress. When you're talking about trauma, we're talking about the fight or flight response. We're talking about negative stress. People talking about the sympathetic system being all revved up and how to calm the sympathetic systems, activate the parasympathetic system, deep breathing. Pretty much every relaxation technique I'm aware of in some way tries to do that. Calm the sympathetic excitement, activate the parasympathetic, and they kind of work oppositely, so that if you can activate the parasympathetic, it'll calm the sympathetic. And if it's deep breathing or progressive muscle relaxation, there's a whole variety. There's, if you put in Google relaxation techniques, you'll get 1,482,167 hits. Plenty of material out there, and they're all trying to do in one form or another that they're trying to calm the fight or flight, fear, anger, sympathetic response, activate the parasympathetic response, that's all good. But one thing people don't realize is just the sympathetic isn't always bad, in that that's the same system if you play volleyball with your friends, if you're hiking in a national park with your friends, there's lots of fun. The sympathetic system is what activates your body also for good stress. And there's an interesting book about like the upside of stress. And actually, my assessment, she doesn't formulate it this way, but looking at all the research she cites, what she's basically talking about is good stress or constructive stress is when your sympathetic system fires your body up, and your brain and your activity, and you're stimulated, but you are not having your relational circuits are still on, which this author doesn't talk about that at all. But all the scenarios that she describes where she says stress is good, they're all situations where the person is not overwhelmed by negative emotions, and their relational circuits are still on. So the way I would formulate that is sympathetic activity can just be like you go to the gym and you work out, and your sympathetic system is fired up. That's what that helps activate your blood pressure, your increased blood pressure, your pulse rate, stimulates blood flow to your muscles. You need all that to get stronger. If you're going to exercise, again, if you're going to play volleyball, if you're going to hike in a national park, if you're together in your living room on New Year's Eve, laughing at jokes and remembering stories together, your sympathetic system, if your relational circuits are on, and you're not overactivated for negative emotions, that's actually constructive. You could call it, well, this person called it like constructive stress, but it's sympathetic activity fires up your body, and it's all good. And what's fascinating is the research about, there's piles and piles of research about bad stress. And my assessment is that's when you have negative emotions going, your relational circuits are off, and your sympathetic system is fired up. So you have sympathetic system fired up, you're in fight or flight response. Your negative emotions have actually are intense enough to turn your relational circuits off. So you're non-relational, and your sympathetic system is fired up. And in that picture, all the research about bad stress applies for that window. And if you're doing that, there's so much research about all the ways it kills you, as far as cortisol stimulation and affects your immune system, decreases your immune system, actually causes brain damage if you do it intensely enough, often enough to have that much cortisol going frequently, and that actually affects your brain in negative ways. That the toxic stress, it's there. I mean, again, if you put that in Google, negative effects of bad stress, you'll also get 1,487,281 hits. It's somewhere between sobering and horrifying of how many bad things as far as your bones and your connective tissue and your immune system and your longevity and your blood pressure and your cardiovascular disease. And bad stress is really bad. So that the key is, well, for one, just recognizing the difference there is not always just, oh, shut down the sympathetic, fire up the parasympathetic. That's if you're doing bad stress, that's what you want to do. But there's a good stress window just to name that and realizing, oh, your sympathetic system, that's what you want. That's a part of your team when you go to the gym and you want to make your muscles bigger. So just naming that. And so with that larger context in place, then we say, okay, when you've got bad stress, one thing is, so how do you tell when you've got bad stress versus good stress? And then what do you do about it? So in my assessment, the simplest, most effective way I've found to spot when you've got bad stress is when your relational circuits are off. There's almost 100, in my experience, there's almost 100% overlap between, well, you feel bad and you, okay, I feel bad. And you check, yep, my relational circuits are off. If you feel bad and your relational circuits are off, 98% of the time you're doing bad stress. So that's a really valuable tool. And I don't know if you've mentioned to your people about our Smarting Yourself, the one book there's like half of this book is about how do you tell when your relational circuits are off? And there's very specific, concrete questions you can ask. And I have a whole 2 chapters about here's 15 things you can check and like an example of exactly what it looks like when they're on and when they're off. So learning to recognize when your relational circuits are off, that's huge important. Actually, something you can do. It takes a little bit of work, but it's very doable. And once you actually develop that skill, it'll just become a part of your life. So you'll be much, much quicker to spot when you've got bad stress running. Then the question is, so how can we reduce the damage, minimize care for that in whatever way? And then once we're focusing, now we've identified I'm running bad stress, my circuits are off, I've got the sympathetic negative emotion relational circuits off, bad stress going. I've spotted that. So then what do we do? And in our email interactions, you mentioned, so that's where one of the first things is calming. Your sympathetic system is fired up in a fight or flight way, and stuck. If it's more than a few minutes, then it's stuck there. You're not paying attention. You step into the street, you realize there's a bus, and then you jump back onto the sidewalk. Okay, that's good. That will prevent you from getting hit by a bus. But you want to calm down in a few minutes and go back into a healthy balance, parasympathetic, sympathetic. As you pointed out yourself, in our current society, and that's a long conversation your summary was good. In our current society, people are often stuck in that sympathetic bad stress, not just for 30 seconds to jump out of the street and not get hit by a bus and then calm down, but just smolders in the background for hours, days. I mean, many of us often run with the toxic stress, unhelpful sympathetic activation running in the background lots of the time, most days, that's the picture that's going to shorten your life, increase your cardiovascular disease, decrease your immune system, cause so many bad things that we don't have time to talk about them all. In fact, the point is, just utterly convince people that it's important to learn what we're talking about now. How to spot when you're doing that, and then how to care for it. So you spot it. The first thing is calming, and that's again all the techniques, whether it's deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. There's variations. There's variations on relaxation exercises. There's a number of those in the Outsmarting Yourself life model. People talk about that. I think you've commented on that frequently. A whole number of tools that basically calm the sympathetic system, activate the parasympathetic system. So just doing those things, just calming your body. And there's so much, the Lord has designed us to have such an intimate connection, both directions between our body and our brain, mind, spirit, that any intervention that calms your body will help to calm your emotions, your thoughts, your brain, your spirit. And that sympathetic calm parasympathetic activate, again, progressive muscle relaxation, deep breathing, any of those exercises. That's one tool that will, it's most effective when you practice it and then use it regularly. It's the most common thing is that a person hears a talk like this and they look it up and do deep breathing a couple times or progressive relaxation. They'll do it a few times. Oh, I feel better. And then life gets busy and their kids have to go to soccer camp and they get a parking ticket and their lawn needs to be mowed and they have to go to see their doctor's appointment. And 2 weeks later, it's one more good idea that they tried 3 times. That will have almost zero benefit.
Right.
If you find a way to hold on to it, like possibly you remember this conversation, maybe you'll, if you have trouble holding on to it, Google toxic effects of negative stress and read it until your hair is standing up and you're motivated enough to spend more time on the treatment or the care, because what the ideal is to actually find a physical calming technique that fits for you, and then practice it until you can kind of do it without having to read the instructions, and then incorporate that as a resource and a habit in your lifestyle. And what the research shows is when you do that, when you practice it until you can do it easily, and you do that kind of regularly when you notice that you're doing bad stress, it will actually calm your baseline sympathetic activation will measurably go down, like just your average everyday, all day sympathetic activation baseline will come down and you'll run calmer all the time. Again, if you find a technique that works for you, it's a good fit, learn it till you can do it easily without having to look at the instructions, and then fit that in regularly. One huge positive, strong, incredibly research supported intervention. Yay. Okay. Another thing you can do is when you notice, and this is most of the secular, there's huge amounts on what I just said, physical calming sympathetic system techniques you can learn and practice and decrease your baseline sympathetic activity. That's millions of hits on Google. This one, saying it this way, I'm not aware of people other than me and life model folks. The idea of if you notice that your relational circuits are off, just physical calming is one thing to help them come back on, but there's 2 others that are just as powerful or even more so. And one is to focus, what am I stressed about? And in our current culture, usually it's got a big psychological component. It's not, I mean, jumping out of the way of a bus or running from a grizzly bear or trying to put out, a forest fire. Mostly that's not what we're dealing with in our current society. Mostly when you've got toxic stress, negative stress, your relational circuits are off, there's a psychological component. And if you can focus, what is it I'm stressed, what am I worried about? I'm paying my taxes, signing up for Medicare, have I got my kids vaccinated for going back to school in September? Whatever the one of 27 things that you're stressed out about. If you can focus it and get words for it, and then receive attunement from a friend, or like one of the reasons I talk all the time about Immanuel is that Jesus is always with us. And if you, to me, actually, my first, even before the physical relaxation techniques, I mean, the secular folks will talk all about that. That's their biggest emphasis. I would actually say number 1 is learn about the Immanuel approach, especially practice it first with the facilitator so it works its strongest and clearest, and you'll be most convinced if you do it with another person. But once you get good at it, pretty much this is usually, if you have a good experience with the facilitator and really become convinced and you get the core principles, there's tools for doing it on your own, like the Joyful Journey, Immanuel journaling. And it's a tool right there with the physical calming. In fact, I use this first. In fact, I rarely use the physical calming stuff now because I just get a quick, even a subtle connection with Jesus. And then I focus, what is it I'm stressed about? And I take 15 to 20 minutes, but it's actually the best part of my day. But and then you talk directly to Jesus and you just get words. These are all the things that I'm stressed out about right now. And as you're able to feel the truth that he's hearing you and understanding you and cares about what you're sharing, and it's glad to be with you, you will receive his attunement. And God has designed our brains so that receiving attunement, getting words for what's stressing you, sharing it with another person, and then receiving their attunement, that is the most effective intervention for getting your relational circuits back online. And my observation, and this is the secular people have not figured out how to study this one yet. Like the lady who wrote the big book about good stress, bad stress, doesn't have this part. This is not a part of her paradigm. But what I observe is whenever I get my relational circuits back on and receive the Lord's attunement, what I observe is my stress, it goes from kind of dysfunctional fight or flight, stressing, worrying, all the clues of bad stress, to, okay, how do I meet this challenge in community, feeling the Lord's presence, relational circuits on, I'm troubleshooting in ways that are productive, and the toxic stress is almost completely gone, and I'm doing functional problem solving with my relational circuits on. So
Massive difference.
Oh, massive. And what's fascinating, I mean, I think she's maybe a Stanford graduate, the bestseller of the book she wrote, The Upside of Stress. And I mean, she identifies all the things that she identifies that help stress be good stress and not bad stress. They're all things that strongly correlate with your relational circuits being on or that bring them on. I mean, when I read her book, like I said, she doesn't have that in her paradigm, but I'm looking at it and saying, oh, everything she's talking about, those are relational. All the positive stress things, all the constructive stress pictures she paints, they're all physical sympathetic activation with your relational circuits on and not having intense negative emotions. And the things that she talks about can help a difficult situation be good stress are all things that have to do with community and relational connection, and all things that I'm confident actually help bring your relational circuits on.
Yeah.
So receive it, you get words, what's bothering me, get words, focus it, get words for it, talk to a friend or to Jesus, receive attunement, get your relational circuits on. Right there next to it is deliberate appreciation. And that's again, in the big line book, also, Smarting Yourself, there's like a third of the book, or there's a big chunk of the book. How do you tell when your relational circuits are on? And the next 4 chapters are, how do you tell when they're off? Sorry, how do you tell when your relational circuits are off? And then the next 4 chapters are, how do you bring them back on again? Receiving attunement, deliberate appreciation, techniques that calm your body, and then the fun one is just non-sarcastic humor. If you watch, anytime, if you're kind of, it tends not to be so good for if your relational circuits are really black, they're totally off. If you're in a horrible situation, your boss is screaming at you, you think you're going to get fired, your house is on fire or something, humor is not going to be the one that's going to work. But if your relational circuits are kind of gray, dimly off, and you're moderately stressed, and you're in a conversation that's difficult, if the people in the room can all have a few moments of clean, non-sarcastic humor, you can just feel and watch the relational circuits come back on again. So that's a fun bonus number 4, where the big 3 are receiving attunement, deliberate appreciation, physically calm your body. And the deliberate appreciation one is when you get good at it, you can do it in 3 to 5 minutes. But 5 to 10 minutes initially, close your eyes, picture yourself in a personal positive experience from the past, like one of your personal autobiographical memories that was especially positive, where you felt gratitude, and think about those details until you feel gratitude again. And that'll bring your relational circuits on. So all that, those are all techniques that are, if you actually practice them until you can do them pretty easily and regularly, they're dramatically effective. I mean, they're simple. It took me 20 minutes to describe those, and it will take you usually somewhere between 3 and 15 minutes to use them. And if you do the front end work of learning the skill, so you can kind of do it easily, it's actually fairly easy to spot your circuits are off and you need it, employ one of those interventions to dramatically reduce the short term right now and the next, for right now, the next couple hours, while I'm going to go talk to my spouse, figure out what to do with my kids, deal, right here today, the next couple hours, the techniques I've just described are surprisingly effective and simple and fairly easy to use once you do the front end work of learning them and practicing them until you get good at them. Short-term picture. So long-term, in my assessment, one of the being triggered to old trauma, it might even be the number one. The world is full of stressful stuff. But when I watch closely for myself, for Charlotte, my wife, or for any of my clients or my mentorees or the people I'm training, that anytime they're significantly in toxic sympathetic activation, relational circuit off, negative emotion stress, they're also triggered. Whether it's triggering caused the whole problem, they had some small interaction that would otherwise normally, if they did not have an old trauma getting stirred up, it's some little interaction with the person at the grocery store clerk, somebody in traffic, a comment that your daughter's second grade teacher made as you were walking out of the room, some little thing that if there weren't old trauma involved, it would just be a teeny little poke. You'd walk on, and it would not put you into toxic stress. It would be an irritation or a brief inconvenience, a momentary, whether it's seconds or minutes, hassle or problem to deal with, and you would have the resources to kind of sort it out without even going into negative stress. Your fight or flight system would not get fired up. Your relational circuits would stay on. You wouldn't even go into negative stress. But when some small bump or trigger in the present pokes on an old trauma, that comment your kid's second grade teacher makes, which might be a little misunderstanding or maybe a little bit ignorant or misplaced to root over, and say, she means well, she's a good teacher, you just let it slide and go to lunch. If you had a much more toxic second grade teacher or grade school teacher when you were a kid, if you had a teacher that kind of reminded this, your kid's teacher reminds you of this old classroom, and you had lots of much worse experiences, and that little small event from a mostly means well, pretty decent teacher for your child activates a big pile of much worse old stuff for you from grade school, then that little bump from your child's second grade teacher will totally throw you into sympathetic fight or flight, circuits off, negative emotions, toxic stress. So often the old triggered stuff is actually doing the whole, that's like the little bump in the present is 2% or 7% or something. And the old crap, the old pain is 95, 97, 98% of why you're doing sympathetic fight or flight, toxic stress, relational circuits off, negative emotions. And the rest of the time, let's say there's the actual stress in real time in the present is significantly larger. So maybe it's, you're worried about losing your job. One of your friends you have a significant argument with a friend. You've got you're in somewhat truth-based, reasonable conflict with your spouse. Your child is upset about something from school that's not totally crazy. I mean, it's somewhat reasonable. Anytime you have a fairly significant real-time truth-based pain stress in the present, it would be unusual for that not to find some similar, if you've got a big enough real truth-based pain in the present, if that's going to find there's going to be something similar in especially the first 20 years of your life where you have fewer resources. I mean, nobody gets through childhood and adolescence without a fairly large basket full of small t trauma. So most of the time, if you have some, reasonably sized, some of your distress is understandable, truth-based in the present, it's also going to find old stuff that it resonates with, which is just going to increase it. Whether it's the truth-based in the present is 32%, and it's going to just triple by old stuff, Or maybe the present is 65%, but you're going to add 3.5 bricks. I mean, you're going to add 35% of old stuff. You don't need that. If you've got a real situation that's 65% stress to overwhelm your maturity skills, turn off your relational circuits, wind up your sympathetic fight or flight. The last thing you need is an additional 35% from the past to make it worse. So whether it's a little poke in the present that you would, if you weren't triggered, you just walk right past it, or it's a reasonably sized, real truth-based stress in the present, either of those situations, old stuff getting activated is going to make it worse or pretty much cause the whole problem. Now, in that situation, first piece is what we just talked about for short term. That will almost always, 95, 98% of the time, if you got that picture, your relational circuits will be off. So you feel bad, you remember this conversation, and you say, check my relational circuits. Sure, my circuits I feel bad, my circuits are off, and anything else you want to check, and if you want to know about sympathetic clues of, sympathetic activation, but usually once you get decent about, I feel bad and my circuits are off, you realize, oh, I'm doing toxic stress, and my circuits are off. The interventions we just talked about, also when you're triggered, all those same interventions will reduce the immediate effect. Like, how much damage are you going to do in your marriage, for your parenting, for your coworkers, if you're triggered and your sympathetic is fired up and you're doing fight or flight and your relational circuits are off? You're not going to do your best work. You're not that's especially anything that involves relationships. If you want to go out in the backyard and chop a bunch of wood, it'll actually help you calm down. If you're going to shovel snow, chop wood, or just, throw rocks in the water, you'll be okay. But if you have anything complicated that involves relationships, you'll have it's double tough to accomplish anything good. And you're going to be 5 times more likely. I mean, just that's not a research base. That's just like off the top of my head. You're going to be way more likely to make a mess, and it's going to be harder to do things that are constructive. So for that trigger piece, those same tools for right now, short term, how do I reduce the damage, and getting your relational circuits back on will dramatically reduce the damage right like this afternoon for anything that you're triggered. If you're triggered about who knows, again, it's going to make your marriage, parenting, coworkers, being a supervisor, boss, anything you're doing that's complicated, and especially if it involves relationships, being triggered, having relationships off is all going to go. It's going to turn out always more difficult, less good, hopefully not disastrous, but on a regular basis, you'll make a pretty big mess.
Right.
Spot my relational circuits are off. Use those tools to get them back on. Calming, attunement, a little bit of appreciation, humor. Huge reduction in the damage you're going to do this afternoon. And then the long term is you use tools to actually get the old stuff. You shovel away. So as you know, Carrie, one of the things that I harp on all the time is have an Immanuel lifestyle. It's not just so the 3 times a year when you set your whole house on fire and your children and your wife doesn't want to talk to you for a week. I mean, and when it gets that bad, you'll go actually talk to a therapist 3 times to get, the biggest, worst, most blow up your whole life triggers when they make a bad enough mess and your whole life is on fire, once or twice a year or once or twice in 5 years, you'll go see a therapist when your whole world is on fire. Well, and that's better than nothing. But a much, much, much better plan for the long term is you realize, okay, the big T trauma with huge triggers, those are the ones that are easy to spot. They blow up your whole life. But we all have a whole lot more small T trauma that causes smaller disruptions. Smaller problems that are costly, but they aren't burning down your whole life. And those happen every week, maybe every day for many of us. And a lifestyle where you have you know about the tools for healing, the ones I like the most are Immanuel Approach. You learn those. You have a couple people in your life that you can, ideally is you have prayer partner or two, a small group, a therapist. You can do this with your close friend or your spouse for the ones where they're not the trigger. But I have a little network of, like Charlotte, I can do stuff that she's not the trigger. I have a prayer partner that I just get together with regular, just that's a part of my lifestyle. And once you get good at it, you can often pick low-hanging fruit just on your own. So you can use a manual approach on your own, harder to do, but when you get good at it, you can get little things on your own, which is logistically advantageous because it's a whole lot more convenient. Oh, I'm triggered right now. I've got a few minutes free. Sit down and talk to Jesus. That's a whole lot easier to do than make an appointment with your prayer partner or call your therapist and figure out, do you have a space on Wednesday afternoon, which happens to be 2 days from now. And you don't really want to be miserable between now and then anyway. And by the time you get there, your triggers kind of calm down, so it's harder to get to. I mean, eventually being able to do it yourself and having some things in place with your network. And when you put that together, what you have is an Immanuel lifestyle. And the goal there is over time, you just regularly shovel away at that old stuff. And Charlotte and I have been doing that now for 25, 30 years. Every 6 months. I mean, this is for the last, and the longer we've gone, the better we get at it. So it's gotten better the longer we've done it. But probably for 30 years now, every 6 months we'll pause, and we actually, for our birthdays and our anniversary, we'll kind of sit down together and kind of think about what's happening for the last year and have a little timeline of important things in our relationship. So 2 or 3 times a year, we'll sit down and just kind of look at our lives together and remember what was important over the last 3, 6 months, year. Every time we do that, we can notice observable positive change in the amount of joy in our relationship. Certain tangles are getting less. Oh wow, that one that we banged into, who knows how many times the first 15 years of our marriage. I think we finally got the 3 big root triggers. We're not getting that one anymore. Like, do you remember the last? Can you? And we're just like, wow, amazing. I mean, one of those regular conflicts that because you both get triggered, and so you couldn't fix it because there's old stuff stirred up that's not a part of the conversation in the present. And you bump into it on a regular basis if you're married and living in the same house and handling all kinds of life together. And every married couple has these. I mean, if you've been married for 10 years, you can look at, there's 8 or 12 or 14 tangles where you could both describe them, what causes them, and you always end up in the same place. And it's like, they're costly. And as Charlotte and I have done that Immanuel lifestyle, 2 or 3 times a year, every year, we'll sit down, look back 3 to 6 months. We can notice observable, like those. Well, actually, now that we've been doing it for this long, all of the big ones have gone away, and that's crazy.
Amazing.
Like every one of the 12 or 14, and 3 that were really horrible, and 5 that were bad, and 6 that were painfully annoying. But our portfolio of repeat unresolvable marriage conflicts that we had identified from the first 10 years of our marriage. We did 10 years of marriage without these tools. That was actually a very good experiment. Like the medical, what you want to do for a medical experiment is, and usually it's a few months. So having 10 years, I mean, you do a part of the trial, you do 6 months where Carrie has her problems without the medication. Then you look in the next 6 months, she takes the medication, and then you do 6 months where you go back off of it and you compare on, off, on. Well, we did not go back. That would have been, but we did 10 years of marriage without these tools, but the end of which we had a whole portfolio of our stinker conflicts that we recognized them, we knew all about them, we know we knew exactly where we'd end up, and we had not been able to fix them. And doing a Immanuel lifestyle for the next 20 years, every single one of those stinker stuck conflicts in our portfolio has pretty much, I mean, maybe there's a few little scraps for a couple, but they're pretty much all gone. That's crazy.
That's pretty amazing.
that, I mean, mostly now we enjoy being married. I mean, we spend most of our time now being on the same team, enjoying being together, having that joy back and forth thing. Oh, and here's a just sauce for the married couples. Lord Jesus, bless the singles. Um, but the circuits that do, when your relational circuits are on, the glad to be together when you're having joy together, those are the same circuits that do romance and infatuation. So if you're married and you get rid of more and more of those conflicts and you spend more and more time with your relational circuits on and you learn to deliberately communicate, I'm glad to be with you. You can actually, like, the ingredients for what makes infatuation romance are actually, we know them. I mean, Dr. Wilder and I mean, uh, I haven't heard anybody else put them together quite so clearly, but I mean, it's all out there. This is all brain science that people agree on. We know the recipe for how to very deliberately build and maintain joyful friendship, good, but in a romantic relationship, you can actually deliberately include the ingredients where you will actually stay in love with your spouse. And you will enjoy your date night and it will feel romantic after you've been married for 34 and a half years. And that's it's one of the best possible ways to not get in trouble elsewhere. If you're actually having wonderful date nights with your wife and you miss her when she's gone and you still feel romantically in love with her, that's just one more. I can't remember what put me under that, but that's all the things we're talking about. When
fits. Yeah.
you put these things together and live the Immanuel lifestyle and get less and less triggering, your sympathetic system, bad stress is online less and less. So more and more of the time you'll be in a good space relationally, circuits on. If you're doing stress, it's good challenge stress making you stronger. You do all that for years, and every part of your life will increasingly thrive, including all of your relationships, and especially if you have a life partner, that piece of your life will just get better and better, and people will notice. So okay, that was my crash course. However long that took me, that was 37 minutes, whatever, to summarize all the most important points.
I've written down so many notes, and a lot of the things I wanted to comment on, if you've already commented on them. So, looking at just that overall emphasis, though, first of all, one big thing I'm hearing is just increasing that awareness and being aware of what's happening and living that Immanuel lifestyle. I think that is so incredibly important. I know just to speak to that from a personal standpoint, I know that's what God has worked with me so much. Like, I a few episodes ago, I talked about just how all through my prayer journal it says, "Be still and know, be still and know, be still and know," because that is what He's told me consistently. Even gave me a dad joke at one point, but I'll have to tell you that one later. But He keeps pointing back that just how important it is. Just connect with me, connect with me, connect with me.
Yes.
How important that is to be aware. And I have truly learned at this point that when things come up, when there's a conflict, when there's a triggered reaction that happens, I have learned that those are such opportunities because he
Yes.
wants to bring that into healing. So when something happens, when there's a conflict in relationship, when we just have that big reaction, that when our brain perceives that threat, we go like, and we have the negative toxic kind of
Yep.
stress, like that is such a red flag, but that's also
Yes.
such an opportunity, because if we are truly taking that to him each time, he wants to give us that attunement. He wants to bring us into that healing. And he has made that so incredibly clear to me. And I'm amazed at how many things that we react to that we don't even realize are an issue until we
Yes.
pause and take time to notice, until we're being more intentional and we slow down, because we are in such a fast-paced society and we are in such a fast-paced habit of functioning that we don't often stop to do the mindfulness and just to slow down and say, okay, be still and know he is God.
Yes, and that's a skill, being mindful, being more aware of your internal, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, what's affecting me, why am I angry right now? That's a skill you can learn, and over you'll watch yourself get better and better at that. And once you practice that and grown in that skill for a number of years, it will be rare that something will upset you and you don't know why. I mean,
Right.
most of the time you'll notice, oh, that's
There are patterns.
I'm overreacting. Huh, what just happened? I'm just really, I'm triggered. My circuits are off. I'm feeling bad. What just happened? Oh my goodness. The interaction with the bus driver 5 minutes ago. What? I totally overreacted that. It's making the things that feel true in my head, blah, 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 blah. They're exaggerated and crazy and non-relational and judgmental. What's that about, Lord? Because I mean, he was a little rude, but it was, I mean, I'm way overreacting. What's that about, Lord? Oh my gosh. These three things about how he interacted with me makes me think of Bobby Jones from seventh grade who just tormented me and whatever. Like most of the time, you'll notice when you're upset and your circuits go off, and you'll pause for a little bit and you'll even be able to figure out why. And then in the short term, you get your circuits back on to limit the damage. And then when you get a chance, you go back and take care of that. Red flag. I'm triggered right now. I can limit the damage. Red flag. Get your circuits back on, and everybody around you will be happier. You'll bless the people around you instead of hurt them. Your children, your spouse, your friends, your workers, your coworkers, your employees, your employers. Flag. Get your circuits back on. Everything in your life will be better short term. And opportunity. Where did that come from? Make space to go get it.
Right.
Absolutely, Carrie.
I have often spoken even with the more secular based clients about how that whole process of rupture and repair is important because we're going to have the ruptures. Things are going to happen. We're human. We live in this,
Yep.
this broken world. I mean, like things are going to
Yep.
happen. But
Yep.
when we're taking those as opportunities and we're saying, okay, what do I do with this now? Like stopping and taking time to really process that. You talk a lot about the pain processing pathway.
Yes.
And how important that is, being able to stay connected with those painful memories, with the painful emotions, how important it is to be able to stay with that and see it
Yep.
through to completion. It's kind of like digestion, like digesting those
Yes.
painful experiences. And you have to
Yeah.
actually process those things.
Yes, metabolize them is a word I often use,
Right.
but that's actually part of what that's what you do in digestion is
Yeah.
you actually you take that lump in your stomach and you actually break it down, digest it, metabolize it into learning, compassion, empathy, wisdom, maturity. Instead of having it be a lump of problem that undigested, it just makes you sick.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually metabolize it into wisdom, maturity, empathy, capacity. That's the way God designed us to be able
Right.
to actually, and it said that's right in the Bible. You know, consider joy, my brethren, when you consider various trials. I mean, any trial that the Lord allows into your life is an opportunity to grow stronger if you embrace it as an opportunity to get healing for old triggering,
Right.
or if it's just a stressor in the present, how to get through it with Jesus, keep your circuits on. Any trial the Lord allows you into your life can make you stronger if you cooperate with the way that God designed your brain. Like, oh, it's right there in the Bible. Consider it pure joy, my children, when you encounter various trials. You know, the Lord works all things together for good for those who love Him and are called according to His purposes. It's like, oh, that's, and the brain scientists are actually outlining all the medical processes of. Sure enough, that's exactly how it works.
Amazing, isn't it? It's like God knows what
Amazing.
He's talking about.
The joke Charlotte and I have is, don't waste the good trigger. If something has triggered you, and so you're feeling miserable. Okay, first of all, you already survived the trauma where it's coming from. Whatever happened to you when you were 3 years old or 15 in high school, whatever, you already survived the original trauma. So you've already paid for that. Like the worst, you know, the biggest payment is when you actually experience the miserable thing in the effort to begin with. Your mother died of cancer when you were in high school. Your father left the family when you were in grade school from alcoholism. Some bully terrorized you when you were in junior high, whatever. You've survived that. And now you're already miserable. You got triggered. So you've already kind of paid the bill. The first time around, you survived it. Now you're already miserable. So like, why don't waste a good trigger? So that you have a window of opportunity where the Lord is poking you and saying, hey, this little thing just upsets you, and you had a bigger reaction that's coming from somewhere important. The rest of your life will be better. You'll be more able to perceive. I'm pretending to be Jesus. You'll be more able to perceive my presence. You'll be more able to connect with me. You'll be able to hear my Holy Spirit. Like every aspect of your life and your ability to serve me and perceive me and connect with me will be better going forward if you had noticed, window of opportunity, something just got poked. That's important. Make space to go find it and fix it. Don't waste a good trigger.
That's very good advice. I quote that passage so often, and it actually makes sense to me now. Whereas, of course, younger years, I was like, that doesn't even make sense. But I'll trust it's true, but it doesn't make sense. Now it makes
Which
sense.
which passage are we talking
The
about?
1 James 1, 2 through 5, like the count of all joy when you face different trials, it makes so much sense because that is truly the process he takes us through when we're taking it back to him and we're choosing to not waste the trigger. Like if we actually take it back to him and say, okay, what do you want to do here? But it does take that intentional slowing down, the mindfulness and being aware, just like with changing any habit, because I think that we as human beings get in such habits, like cognitively, like our thinking, we get in such
Yeah,
habits of just jumping to the stressor, jumping to the threat, like jumping to conclusions based on past experience. And there's so much to be said here for also that generational trauma, generational sin, even
yeah,
getting into
yeah,
those thoughts that are
yeah,
not
yeah,
godly. There's
yeah,
so much to be said there as far as breaking of those patterns, but it does take with first slowing down, increasing
yeah,
awareness, and making it a conscious effort to spend time in his presence,
yeah,
to
yeah.
seek him out, because when we seek him, we are going to find him. He's faithful.
Yes, and as you said, the being more mindful, so you're more mindful, you're more self-aware. You notice, oh, there's a problem. I feel bad. My circuits are off, and then you make space, slow down, calm, connect with God. It just there really is. I mean, all we have the technology. I don't know if you remember the $6 million man, and maybe you're too young, but we have the technology is the deal. We can do this. We have the technology to solve this problem, which is this is accurate. To me, it feels like at this point in time, between the biblical principles and the brain science, we actually know how this works. We have the technology. I mean, if you choose to really study these principles and practice them and master them and apply them regularly, like there's very, very few things that are busted in the world relationally and I mean in the average life. I mean, like this, it doesn't work on cancer yet, but as far as the nuts and bolts, bread and butter, usually challenges and difficulties and stressors and problems and pains in relationships, which well, I'm convinced that's just the fabric of everything. I mean, if you think about how many of the stressors in your life, there's not a relationship in the middle of it, you'd be almost zero. As far as children, siblings, parents, spouse, colleagues, coworkers, employees, employers, people in society, your neighbors. I mean, there's almost, I would challenge you to find more than a couple stressors in your life that do not have a relationship in the middle of them. And we have the technology, especially the relational piece of any problem in your life. You study these principles, master them, practice them, and make them into a lifestyle. And any part of your life where there's relational trouble contributing to the stressors, you can change it.
I do want to go back. Even like I said, I have a whole page of notes that
Yeah,
I've just jotted down. But I know I can't get to all of them. But I do want to go back and just reiterate what you were saying about practicing the things, because I've had so many people go try maybe once or twice the breathing techniques or the relaxation techniques and like, oh, it doesn't work for me. I'm like, okay, how many times did you try that? Did you actually try it multiple times over a long period of a long stretch, because that's what
yeah,
makes it more effective. You actually have to do it and practice it. It's like building reps. You're not going to be
yeah,
able to just jump up and run a marathon the first day.
yep,
You have to build
yep,
muscle.
yep, yep. And the research is very clear on that.
Yeah.
The calming, be still tools as I mean, and there's not so much secular research on the manual receiving attunement, deliberate appreciation stuff, but especially for the calming piece, the research is so strong about um, yeah, the biggest challenge is at the front end. You have
Yeah.
to actually keep at it until it's a habit, until you can feel the benefits. But if you do that, the long-term benefits are very dramatic, very strong, I mean, a really significant positive impact. And I'm convinced we have the same thing with the Connect with Jesus, Immanuel, healing, relational circuits, appreciation, receiving attunement. That just hasn't, I'm not aware of research that's quite so clear and compelling and all over the place
Mhm.
for those things. But yeah, and there's one, Lord, help us getting people to do it regular long enough at the front end until it's a habit and they can feel it and say, oh my goodness, there's no going back. And
Right.
that's so hard to do. I mean, I've encountered, seriously, I've been going through old files recently, and from literally from the last 25 years of old emails and stuff, and trying to reorganize them and delete rubbish and all. And I'm just amazed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd forgotten about that. Those people that went over to Uganda, and those people that went over to Kenya, and this person, and those emails. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who I've talked to and taught about these things that were all so excited about them. And it's sobering how many don't persist.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that parable about the sower, and that was kind of about receiving the gospel. But I've become convinced that that same parable applies to lots of things, and like any good habit. I used to think of that parable and just be like, somehow that's just terrible, Jesus. Why do you do that? Why, like, you're so mean that you only a quarter of the people get to like pass the course. And
Mm-hmm.
I've actually like, he's just describing reality, that you introduce these principles to 100 people, and that all oh wow, this is so cool, that's like so exciting, that makes so much sense, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that. And you check a couple of years later, and a quarter of them, they're all excited about it, but they got distracted by the end of the day. The birds came and picked up the seed before they even got to try it. Their kid got the flu. They bumped into the garage, backing out of the garage. They dented, they busted the tail light. Before 2 days go past, they're so distracted they forgot about it. Another quarter. Oh, excited! They did it for a few weeks, and it was exciting and all. But then other bigger things, their parents need help with retirement, and their child has some problem, and they have 3 kids with 5 child sports that totally eat their whole lives, whatever. And then there's another quarter, excited about it, they do it for a while, but then business, and they overextended if they got a house they can't really afford and a car they can't really afford, and they have to work overtime to be able to pay all the bills, and the thorns, the things of life choke it out. And 2 years go by, 5 years go by, and there's about a quarter left. And I'm just like, wow, Jesus, I wish that I would. And he didn't, I guess he didn't say in that scripture, it doesn't say, and it's going to have to stay this way for eternity. I mean, maybe there's a little hope window, but that's one where, so how, with us in the community, I mean, just an invitation and challenge to the world church, how can we help a whole lot more of those folks somehow catch it and practice it long enough? I mean, I would love to have, actually, you know what? He didn't say the percentages. He said the birds will pick some. I think if we go back and read those scriptures right now, he said that there'll be some the birds will get, and some, the root will be shallow and the sun will come out. Some the thorns will choke them out, and then there'll be some that will bear fruit. He didn't actually say. I think he didn't say the percentages. So what if we can, Lord Jesus, help us as the world church? Is there everything we can possibly do? What if the first category was only 5%, and the second category was 5%, and the third category? What if the first 3 categories we could squeeze them into 1 out of 20, and we'd have 85% of the folks that would remain and bear fruit. So that's the interesting thought that comes to me at the end of our conversation for this morning.
Absolutely. I think a lot of that too is like, I'm always coming back to this, it seems, but the importance of making sure we're plugged in with people who are going to point us back in the right direction, making sure we have our rapid response prayer team, as I refer to my prayer girls with, as the it's the importance of having that accountability, and to have someone who's going to be bold enough to step up and say, okay, have you taken this back to Jesus yet? Have you stopped and thought about this? Or are you actually looking into this? Or like, how can I pray along with you on this? And to be able to have that kind of redirection, because we all need redirection sometimes.
Yes,
So that's
and
one of the big things.
Have community that will, and it's what if the whole team understands about, if your circuits are on, if you have this, you can have a non-relational fear-based accountability thing that's actually pretty toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But if your community has a relational circuits on, so that there's not judgment, and I can bring you a concern, hey Carrie, I want to just, maybe I'm misperceiving something, but it seems like something's been, it feels like you've been off the last few days. And just my sort of peripheral observation is it seems like your circuits are off a lot more than they usually are. Just want to offer that as an observation. If I'm off, you can ignore me. But that's what I'm noticing. And if there's something that's, whether maybe you all know what it's already about and you're already working on it, but just I've been noticing this. It seems like it's kind of been the last couple of days or couple of weeks, whatever. It seems like you're not less joyful and your circuits are off a lot more. Your circuits are on less. And if you haven't noticed that yet, I would just offer that as an invitation, like, go talk to Jesus about that. Because if I'm right about that, then there's something important getting stirred up. Go get it. And
Right.
to have community that can do that for you,
That's huge.
that's huge. In fact, I think there's an essay now. We have had that same thought together to the point where I think in the last year, I actually put a new essay up on the website about Immanuel Approach Community
I love that.
and
I'll have to go check it. I
how
don't think I've
that,
seen that one yet. I'll have to go check it out.
oh, it's exactly what we've just been saying. It's like, and the main point is deliberately building an Immanuel Approach community will help you with all these persistent, like the idea of 5 years from now, you're going to be one of the people who's still doing it and it's woven throughout your life, your whole life. Deliberately building an Immanuel Approach community around yourself is one of the best things you can do to have these things continue and be one of the last group where you're bearing fruit in 5 years.
And that speaks to being set apart and living as like being a living sacrifice and all of those things.
Yes.
Scripture talks about it speaks to that because you're not following the patterns of the world at that point.
Yes. Oh,
You
I
have
like
that
that.
kingdom focused mindset, and that is all the difference. It goes back to that living the Immanuel lifestyle, because it's a lifestyle. It's not just about a task on your list. And I think when we get our heads wrapped around that, it's different, because there will
Yes.
even be times when we're not looking at it as just a task, like, oh, I have to sit down, do the prayer time. Like, it's like, even when I'm driving or if I'm doing dishes or whatever I'm doing, I'm just like, okay, I know you're here with me, Jesus, and I'm talking to Jesus, because that's the
Yes.
lifestyle. Because I realize like he truly is here with me, and there have been so many times that he's revealed things to me or just met with me in exactly what I needed in that moment, but it wasn't something that was structured. And I think sometimes it's just realizing that it truly is the lifestyle aspect. It truly is just,
Yeah.
how do we live that? How do we recognize that he's always with us? He's always in the room, and making that
Yes. Yes. Oh, and if we had a whole nother hour. So a thing I've been increasingly aware of for maybe the last 10 years is just subtle things about, it would take a while to get words, but having done this as a lifestyle now for quite a while, it just, like, the whole fabric of my faith life is at a whole different place. The awareness of God's presence. I feel like I have
right.
one of the things that feels true. It feels true that the foundation of my whole life is a secure attachment with the living, tangible, interactive, personal friendship presence of Jesus. And the whole first 40 years of my Christian walk, I knew that's what, I mean, cognitively, I knew that's what we were supposed to do. And I kind of felt like, I was doing it out of my left hemisphere, and I didn't even realize I wasn't. If you haven't even experienced the real thing yet, you can be sort of simulating it. You can try. Well, and it was no maliciousness. It was not even any dishonesty. It's just I was often subtly triggered. My relational circuits were seldom on, and I was trying to build a life that appeared to be based on a relationship with the living presence of Jesus, as best I knew how, out of my left hemisphere, while I was usually triggered with my relational circuits off.
Yeah.
And I thought I was doing it. And in fact, if you had asked me, I would have told you, oh, yes, that's the most, and I'm trying to do that with all my heart. But oh my goodness, having lived the Immanuel lifestyle now for effectively for 25 years and gotten so many triggers off, and now my relational circuits are mostly on. And I think I could, if we had a whole hour, I could describe in detail how the difference between when I thought I was doing it and now that I am doing it. It's wonderful doing it this way. I mean, the gospel feels like the good news, and it's actually experientially my reality on the average day. The foundation of my life is a secure attachment with a living, tangible, interactive, personal friendship presence of Jesus. Oh my goodness. That is, oh, the pearl of great price. There's another scripture. That's when
There's so many.
really isn't that the pearl? Oh, it's so good. I'm not going to burn in
Yeah.
hell for eternity. But that's like a total fear-based. The pearl of great price is every day secure attachment with the living, tangible presence of Jesus. Oh my goodness. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, I was gonna say I've often described it kind of like when you're in grade school, you learn basic truths and they're true and you believe them. That doesn't change. That hasn't changed. But when you go through different life experiences and it's like you graduate to the next level, like spiritually speaking, even you graduate to the next level, you have that deeper maturity. And that goes back to that verse in James we talked about. But there's a deeper maturity. It's like going to the next level in school. Like you get your master's and you get your doctorate. Like you keep growing because we're
Yes.
we're on this path of learning and trying to be
Hmm.
more like Christ and being
Hmm.
like striving to be more like him and striving to align more and more with him and like shaving off the bits that don't match and shaving off the
Yes.
false beliefs that we've had because of trauma and because of just generational lies that we've believed and
Yeah.
all the
Yep.
things that we had previously just gone along with because that was just the way life was. But then the more
Yes.
we advance, the more we grow, the more we learn. It's like, oh, okay, this is becoming so much more clear now. And this is something that's
Yes.
it's so freeing the further you dive in.
Hmm.
And it's so exciting because it's never dull or boring. Every time I feel like God reveals something else to me, it's so exciting. It's so exciting just to
Yes.
hear his perspective on things because it shifts everything. It's like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that before. And this verse that I've read a billion times makes sense in a new, fresh way again just because that's
Yes.
that's that development because I think that when we're baby Christians, like the living on milk,
Yes.
we're satisfied with that. But
Yes.
what we're talking about, living the Immanuel lifestyle, like that's getting into the meat of things. That's getting into the okay, this is what it's really about. This, like, I wouldn't
Y-
trade this. Like, I don't want the milk anymore. I want the steak. Like,
Yes.
this is
And
a different experience.
yeah, your thought about, of course, there's new truths that you learn when you're 30 that you didn't know when you're five, but
Right,
there are basic truths that you learn when
right,
you're five, and you apply them in a deeper, richer, more powerful
right,
way at a new level of maturity when you're 18. And then you apply them in a deeper, richer, more powerful, deeper level of maturity way when you're
right.
30. And then you do the same thing. And each phase of life, there are core basic truths that you can apply in more and more powerful, deeper, more mature ways. Yeah, that's a cool insight.
It's exciting to see how God develops us and grows us, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
truly never dull because there's always something more to learn, something more for Him to reveal. We are pretty much out of
Yep.
time. We've gone
Yep.
over
Yep.
from what I've
Yep.
planned, but sorry to
Yep.
take time of your day, but I could talk to you all day. You've got so many
Yep.
good things to share. Could you pray for our listeners?
Yes, I would love to. So, Lord Jesus, Abba Father, Holy Spirit, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for the wonderful, crazy, amazing Emmanuel truth that you abide with us, and that the whole crazy incarnation Jesus thing that was an unbelievably expensive sacrifice and plan, and that opened the door that made it possible. The whole Emmanuel God with us. Thank you that you do abide with us, that Jesus, you walk beside us and abide with us. And as we learn and apply these principles and tools, we can experience your living, personal, tangible, abiding friendship presence walking beside us each day. It's just a foundational part of our lives. So we thank you for that. That's all available. And Lord, with our prayers, we release that truth for all the listeners, and that every year from now for the rest of their lives, they'll come each year, they'll be able to look back and say, wow, I am applying and experiencing and walking those truths in a deeper, more powerful, more mature way. We just release your blessings. The truths we were just talking about, that each listener would perceive the ones that are most important for them, they would that those seeds would be planted in their hearts, and well, just I'll be crazy. I mean, when I ask for 100%, that all of the listeners today would be able to build this into a lifestyle, to incorporate these things into their lives, to practice them until their habits, and that they would build a manual community around themselves and embrace an Emmanuel lifestyle, and that every year going forward for the rest of their lives, they'll be able to look back and see observable, positive, tangible growth in their spiritual life in every way. In your name, we thank you for these things. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for coming again. I was so looking forward to this, and I am just excited about what you're doing, and I'm excited about the mission. still. And I'm blown away by just how good God is and how he wants to have that interactive relationship with each of us. I'm so amazed by it.
Oh, amen. It is the good news. I mean, the written word is powerful and profound and good news. But when your faith has the living word, the living presence of Jesus at the dead center, and then the immediate circle out is the living word, it's the written word. So I did 40 years of the first,
Yeah.
and having the living word in the center. Oh my, the good news, the gospel just gets the good news of the good news of the gospel comes alive in a whole new way when the living word, the tangible living presence of Jesus is in the center of it. Wow, it's the good news in a whole new way.
Well, thank you so much for coming in to share today.
You are so welcome.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Everyday Royalty podcast. For more information about Dr. Karl and the Immanuel Approach, visit immanuelapproach.com. If you're feeling stirred after today's episode, maybe you've recognized places where stress or old wounds are keeping you stuck, or you just long for a more tangible, healing, relational connection with Jesus. I want to encourage you to take a next step. Growth and breakthrough often begin with intentional prayer that opens our hearts to God's presence and healing. If you're ready to press into a deeper intimacy and breakthrough, I invite you to download the free Breakthrough Prayer Guide at breakthrough.everydayincredible.net. Inside, you'll find practical, scripturally grounded steps to help you connect with Jesus in the very places you need him most. Remember, God truly is Immanuel, with you in every struggle. You are never alone, and you are equipped in him for healing and transformation.